my relationship with Kurt began in a professional setting when he came to our family's company, Best Way Express, here in Vincennes, Indiana, to take over the director of safety and human resources position some years ago. It wasn't very long before we knew we had hit a home run with Kurt, and not only was he a great colleague, but more importantly, he became a dear, close family friend, and that transitioned into him really being a close mentor of mine, as well as my brother's, and we will forever be grateful for the friendship that we developed over these last several years, and we're going to miss Kurt dearly, but we know we'll see him on the other side, and quite frankly, we can't wait till that day.
And thinking about Curtis today, thankful for Curtis. All those days that my brother Rich and I and Curtis met for lunch at Ann's restaurant in Jonesboro back in the 90s, so many times. And every time we met, the topic was always about the Lord, always. And just an encouraging guy, loved him, considered him one of my best friends that I've had in life. Good man, a godly man. Love you guys. God bless you.
In thinking about sharing a personal story, I just would like to share something from my study Bible. I'm currently studying the book of Ezra, and I would just like to share something that is in the study notes. Ezra demonstrates how a gifted Bible teacher can move God's people forward. He was effective because he was a well-versed student of the law of the Lord, and because he was determined to obey those laws. He taught through both his speaking and his example. Like Ezra, we should determine both to study and to obey God's word. I feel that Curtis was this person.
Some of my favorite childhood memories are because Mr. Curtis would spend time bush hogging trails for Autumn and I to play behind their house in the woods. We would spend hours and hours on those trails playing Pioneer Woman and cooking with berries and leaves that we found. It was idyllic for us to grow up that way, and it was because of him.
A couple things about Curtis that I remember just off the top of my head. We were in rehearsal at the Old Central Baptist Church. We were in the orchestra rehearsal, and my back was hurting me. And he said, "Here, lay on the floor, and I'll stand on your back, and I'll pop your back." So I was about 130, and he's about 185, and so he stood on my back and walked around on my back for a little bit. And I don't know if that made it feel better, but I remember that. We had some good times. And something we always used to say to each other was, "Koinonia, brother." So I'll always remember that too. So, "Koinonia, brother." Take care.
I guess the best memory I have of Kurt is the fact that he gave Mary and Teresa's mother and dad 3 cars in a succession that he could trade it in or sold. And it's not like he and Teresa were rich or had the extra money. He felt like they needed it. They could not afford their own. And he just gave them to them out of his heart, just out of the goodness of his heart. I don't know how many people would have done that. I just don't know. I'd like to think I would have in the same situation, but I'm not sure. But I know for a fact Kurt did.
So, what's a good story that, or something, well, this is probably going to be more embarrassing for me, but I still remember it to this day. And to give you a little context here, so we were on a youth choir trip, I believe. It was a youth trip of some kind. We were, I was a teenager, a younger teenager, so probably 12, 13 years old. And I can't remember who was in the hotel room besides me, Mr. Curtis, I believe Danny Lyles. I can't remember who the youth were that were in the room. But we were there. It was a night. We were watching something on the television. And we were all just kind of hanging out. And Mr. Curtis says, "Wow, what is that smell?" And kind of looked around the room trying to figure out what it was. Come to find out, it was my feet. Yes, my feet. Don't believe that I had socks on at the time, but I can't remember that specific detail. But needless to say, that is where I learned foot hygiene. I would considered myself a fairly clean person up until that point in my life, but he actually had me go in the bathroom and get a bar of soap and a washcloth and watched me clean my feet thoroughly. And probably to this day, the way that I wash my feet, I would have to say that has to do with that. And I have never wanted to have stinky feet ever again. But unfortunately, I have passed that along to my children. So I have had to teach them foot hygiene as well. So that's probably one of many stories, but one that I can remember still to this day. And yeah.
One thing I don't know if many people knew about, but Kurt had a temper. And I love to watch it come to fruition. He and I were responsible for drug and alcohol testing for our employees. And when someone would test positive, we would bring them into our office, and Kurt would say, "I already know the answer to what I'm about to ask you about your drug and alcohol results, and how you respond will dictate how I respond. If you tell me the truth, I can work with it, but if you lie to me, then I can't work with that." And he said, "Can you, to this one particular employee, he said, can you please tell me why you have cocaine in your system?" And the driver sat there for just a moment, and he said, "Mr. Curtis," he said, I spent the weekend with my girlfriend, and I think I got secondhand cocaine." Well, both Kurt and I bit into our jaw to keep from laughing, because we know there's no such thing as secondhand cocaine. Kurt calmly picked up the phone. He acted as if he were dialing. He acted as if someone answered. And he said, "This is Curtis Singleton in Little Rock. Is this Robert Ripley's Believe It or Not?" "Thank you. If it is, could you please send someone to Little Rock to interview a gentleman who just told us he had secondhand cocaine? I'm not sure that I have ever known of anybody that got cocaine secondhand." So I think that would be something great for Robert Ripley's Believe It or Not to provide to the public that came through your museum in St. Augustine, Florida. Thank you, and have a nice day. The employee left the room, and Kurt and I bent over double laughing. We were laughing so hard.
When I think of Curtis, I always think of his hard work, because if you ever went to his house, he always was working on a project.
Uncle Curtis is known for taking everyone in with open arms. I'm sure, as you can tell in this video, to know him is to love him and to feel loved. He makes every single person that he encounters feel loved, and lets them know that he cares and he's there for them.
He was very patient with the kids. He loved the kids and our kids. He loved our grandkids, and he always looked for that moment that he could, teach them, and he was teach them about everything. He loved nature. I just can't say enough good things, about Kurt. We have such great memories of Kurt, and I'm very thankful that we do.
I met Curtis and Teresa and Autumn Singleton when I first moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, which was back in 1989. They were really some of my first friends, and of course I met them through Dave. And it has been a 30-plus year friendship, and to more so add to that is I don't think I could ever thank Curtis and Teresa enough for their 30 years of prayers for me and my children, also for Dave and Jordan, our son, because there have been many times that I've called Curtis and he always makes time for you. He's calming, he's gentle, he's always positive, and he always leads you to the Lord in such a calming, genuine, gracious way.
My biggest memories of Mr. Curtis are as I was growing up as a child and being the bread man, baking bread for everybody and especially for my parents. Always willing to help out with education. He helped me certainly with my education with Eagle Christian Academy. He was just one of a kind and unique. Sure loved his family, and you could tell that. Certainly will miss his personality and his smile, and is always eager to help.
Best thing Curtis is known for is his godly biblical wisdom. He has shared a lot with me over the years.
He just kind of had a dry sense of humor. If you said something bad about somebody that he knew was true, he wouldn't agree with you. He'd just kind of laugh and make a comment that, you know, you weren't wrong, but maybe you shouldn't have said that. He made you want to be a better person.
One word I would use to describe Kurt was he was unflappable. In the case of a crisis, I could always depend on him to be calm and steady. And he would always have an answer to the crisis. And we would put it to rest and move on to something else. He was totally unflappable.
When I think of the one word to describe Curtis Singleton, the word passion keeps coming back to my mind. Kurt was one of the most passionate people I've ever met in my life. He loved his family, he loved his job, and quite frankly, anybody that ever came into contact with Kurt, including myself, was much better for it.
I think I would describe Mr. Curtis as kind, humble, that's 2 words, but certainly a very kind man.
This word doesn't really describe Mr. Curtis, but it's what I think of every time that I think of him, and that's the word varmint. Since I was 3 years old, every time he'd see me, he'd call me a little varmint, and that is always associated with him and brings a smile.
Probably the best word to me that describes Kurt is the fact that he was extremely humble. Always put others before himself.
Whenever I think about Mr. Kurt, I just think about how gentle he was, and very wise, and just a good listener, but just such a gentle and calming spirit.
Sorry, can't use one word, but the best way to describe Curtis is solid rock, and father-in-law.
I'd say the one word that describes Curtis best to me would be builder. Whether he was building shelving for a storage room, or a catio or feeding station for the cats, or building into his family, or building into people. He was always building for God's kingdom.
When I think about Curtis, the word that comes to my mind is encourager, because when you were around him, that's what he was doing, encouraging you.
My word that I would use to describe Curtis, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the word many people use, is integrity. My dad, who was also a great man of integrity, used to say when he would observe someone going astray in their Christian walk or focusing on the wrong things, would say, well, they have their emphasis on the wrong syllable. And I can say with assurance that Curtis had his emphasis in the right place. His focus was on the Lord, his relationship to the Lord, his love for his wife and daughter, and his very dedicated ministry to so many through the local church. Another word that I have to include for Curtis is servant leadership. We were privileged to be in Jonesboro during the time that Curtis and Teresa started the homeschool co-op, and my oldest two were just barely old enough to participate in that. And I can tell you that was before that kind of thing was common or popular at all, and Curtis did it right. He was a true servant leader and hard worker. I purposely stood in front of one of my favorite pictures of sheep because I'm a shepherd. This picture happens to have a man and a woman and a little girl with sheep following behind them. And I know for sure that anyone who is following behind Curtis will have found him faithful.
One word that comes to mind when describing Curtis would be teacher. Wow, so many examples of that from the early days of Eagle Christian Academy to orchestra to different things at church, just to life in general. But definitely teacher would probably be one of the words that would come to mind when thinking about Curtis.
One word that describes Curtis best, in my opinion, would be wisdom. Our pastor has said something in the last 5 years that I have remembered a lot, and that is, there is no wisdom apart from that of Christ. To me, that would be something that would describe Curtis best, because the wisdom that he had, I feel that he got from his relationship with Jesus.
For me, that word is godly man, because when I think about Curtis and what he has meant to my life, it cannot be apart from thinking that he is a person that represents, to me, a man that God put in my life.
Curtis was a hard worker, had a great sense of humor. He loved his family. He loved the Lord. My outlook on life changed dramatically when I did the pathology examination of his prostate biopsy. My youngest brother had a potentially incurable disease that might shorten his life. He and I both rediscovered the meaning of living one day at a time. Through various surgeries, chemotherapies, radiation procedures, he endured the pain. I'm sure he quoted the words in 1 Timothy many times toward the end. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. I love you, Kurt. I'll see you soon.
Kurt was known for a lot of things in his life while here on Earth, and the thing that I think he was probably most known for was his big heart and his willingness to go the extra mile to help others.
He was a great trumpet player. Seems like he could teach almost anything. He was very knowledgeable about so many different subjects. He volunteered in all the different things that we did, from youth choir, youth trips, youth events. Spiritual leader. He led by example, but I think most importantly, in addition to that, he was known as a loving and caring father and husband, not only to Teresa and Autumn, but even people such as myself and many other people over the years.
I would say that the thing Curtis was most known for was his quiet, godly character that came from a deep knowledge of God's Word and the ability to apply it to his life and live it out in his life and be content with the life that God gave him and draw other people into that life in a way that ministered to them.
Thinking about one thing that Curtis is known for, I had to think about steadfast integrity. When I think about the integrity of someone or something, I go back to thinking about shows of undersea explorations and things where they talk about the integrity of the hull. When you have an integrity in a ship, the walls have to be able to be strong and withstand what comes against them. And I feel that Curtis had integrity in everything that he did and everything that I saw.
I know him for having some significant influence on my life. He was a person who he and his family homeschooled, and I never had anyone around me that I knew personally that homeschooled. And there was a time in our lives when we made the decision to homeschool our children. And that is in part because of the influence of Curtis and others at Central Baptist Church who we respected and who we knew that they homeschooled.
Kurt was an absolutely amazing person. It's not often that you wake up and come across an opportunity for your life to change for the better. But I remember walking into that office in Louisville in May of 2009 and meeting Kurt, and my life was transformed. He was an absolutely amazing person. He had kindness in his soul that I don't know many people, if any, I have ever come across that were like him. I can recount so many conversations where all I wanted to do was to help ease his pain, and all he wanted to talk about was mine. That's just who he was. I loved him dearly. I appreciate every day that he was a part of my life. I strive to be better because of him. I miss him dearly. I am saddened that the world doesn't have him anymore. He is in a better place. He is no longer in pain, and I am so grateful for that. I love you all very much. Thinking about you. I know he loved you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to have shared him with me. I'll talk with you soon.
I don't believe I have any memories of Curtis Singleton that were not in any way totally positive. He was always fun to be around. He was enjoyable. He was, best I could tell, usually in a good mood, and never crossed the boundary of being someone that I would need to correct. Yet I would look to him and see a person that could give me correction in a way that would honor God.
As I thought about a personal story with Curtis or a memory, and usually you think in terms of a good memory, I realized I don't know that I have a single bad memory of a time with Curtis. They were all good. I loved putting my work boots and my old khakis in the car and driving to the house, sometimes knowing exactly what project we were going to work on and sometimes having no idea what project there might be, but hoping for one, because I just liked working alongside him. Autumn was his princess, and sometimes we joked that I was the son he never had. Even in that, Curtis never complained that the son he never had turned out to be a middle-aged woman.
Best Curtis memory, Kimberly lived with the Singletons while in college as an adopted student daughter. Kimberly asked Curtis's blessing about going out with me on our very first date, and that was December 1988. His response was, "I think Jim has potential." Well, over 30 years later, our little joke has been, do I still have potential, and his blessing. On May 24th this year, last time we met, he and I talked about it and laughed, and Curtis said, "Yes, you have my blessing, and my potential is still pretty good. So I'll miss your advice, your wisdom, and your love. Thank you, Curtis.
Curtis gave us advice in our family at different times, and even now, I think about one particular time he gave guidance to me about a situation with honoring my mother after she had passed away. That's been many, many years ago, but I still remember that advice and was even just thinking about it recently. So thinking about how he gave advice to others along with the wisdom that he had been given by God is something that I'm going to remember about Curtis forever.
The thing I'm going to miss the most about Curtis is his smile when he was welcoming you into his home and his laughter.
The thing that I will remember most about Curtis Singleton was there was a time in my life when I had some very important circumstances that I was going through, some personal things, and Curtis was the man that I felt free to go to and discuss those things. And to say that he gave me advice is not a strong enough word. Curtis gave me godly counsel that I was able to act on, put into place, and that has made a tremendous difference in my life.
There are a lot of things that I'm going to miss about Kurt. The thing that pops in my mind is first and foremost is his smile and his chuckle. Both of those things always made my day better.
The things that I will miss the most about Kurt would be the phone calls where we would recall old stories together. And I will miss his laughter. He had a wonderful laugh.
The thing I will miss about Curtis most is knowing that he could answer questions, whether it was sitting out on the back deck, answering a question about scripture or life, or working on a project and answering a question about how to do it, or taking a phone call from me to answer a question about a problem with a car. I will miss Curtis being there for answers.
Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing by. Who has seen the wind? Neither I nor you. But when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing through. I'll always remember you, Curtis Ray. When the trees bow down their heads, when the fireflies arrive in June, when the cardinals come to visit me on the deck, when the sky is especially lovely, when our siblings gather, we'll see each other, we'll see you in each other's eyes. I'll always remember you, Curtis Ray, for your goodness and your kindness, for your compassion. I thank you for all you are and all you were. Your mom always said you were a good one. I think she's right. We will see you again soon.